Thank Startup Bangladesh Limited for organizing this as part of the session that Startup Bangladesh has been conducting, Bangladesh Rising, Innovation, Investment, and Impact. So today, I think we'll talk about all three of this, right? Because impact does come from innovation and it does need investment as well to take it forward. And I think in Bangladesh, I was just right before going live, I was just telling everyone that this is a country where impact sort of is there. It doesn't matter whether you're starting a business in EdTech, HealthTech, or AgriTech. There is huge scope for impact. But the question is whether we see that impact, whether we acknowledge it. Do we have enough evidence to show our impact? And then even if we do, what do we do with it, right? How do we get the benefit of generating impact? How do we get the benefit of not just achieving growth in terms of revenue and valuations and the usual stuff that we spend a lot of our time with, but how do we also get the benefit in terms of the impact that we're generating? How do we present those? How do we present those in a credible way so that the investors can trust the impact that we're generating, and vis-a-vis we attract impact funds into the country. So we have a very, I'd say, diverse group of panel today. So first, I would like to introduce Marine Wisma. Marine, I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly.
Not bad.
I'll get better. And she's the Director of Community and Innovation at 2X Global and 2X Ignite. We have Thomas Monaco, who's the President and Vice Chairman for Asia and Americas for CEIF, which is an impact investment fund. We have Rosina Mozumdar, who's the co-founder and CEO of Aroggo, which is one of the leading health tech startups in the country. And we have Raid, who's the CTO of 10 Minute School, again, one of the leading EdTech companies in the country. And I am your host today, Fahad. I always wanted to say that I'm your host today, but yeah, so I'm your host today, Fahad. I am the CEO and co-founder of iFarmer. iFarmer is an AgriTech company based out of Bangladesh. And I am very proud about the fact that even before we had a business model, even before we had a pitch deck to go and share with investors, we had an impact theory, right? Many people ask me like, well, that is not the first thing founders do, but it is probably because of my background and the reason I got into agriculture, worked in the development space for almost a decade before moving into my entrepreneurial journey. iFarmer started with the mandate that it is not about making money for us and shareholders and growing valuation, but it is also about generating impact for the farmers, because if we don't generate the benefit of the impact for the farmers through our products and services, we don't really have a business. And it took me almost, and I still struggle with this, because it is a balance end of the day, right? You can't go full, then you're considered as a non-profit, you operate as a non-profit, and then you can't let go of impact and just be for profit, because that also didn't really sit well with me. I don't yet have the answers. I myself am looking for these answers, that how do you every day, how do you continue to balance this both, right? How do you and it's not about just me, because my team also has to believe in this, right? That they have to see this, that the benefit, the impact that we're generating, it is connected to business, right? It makes sense to focus on impact. It makes sense to measure impact. Some of this, and I'll probably chip in every now and then in between conversations to share how at iFarmer we're doing this in terms of getting access to low-cost funds, in terms of debt, or attracting impact funds, getting risk capital to try new things. And that's where I think the iFarmer story could be. I'll try to use the iFarmer story as an example, but also I think Rosina and Raid, looking forward to your impact journey. So I'll quickly start by asking a very generic question, which is, and it is for the whole panel, is what does in today's world, right? How do we define impact, right? It's a very broad question. Now, with Rosina and Raid, I think I'd focus more on how do you define impact in a Bangladesh context. But I'll start with you, Marine, that at a very global level, right? What do you see currently is happening with the impact funding world? What are the new challenges that has emerged, and what are the opportunities in the impact investment world?
Yeah, that's a big question. But the first thing that jumped to mind, I like it. So, what is impact, and therefore, what is impact investing, and what does an impact fund look like? I think it is balancing financial returns with societal impact. And so it's doing the right thing and making money. And what is the right thing? I think it is choosing to put your entrepreneurial energy into finding a solution to a societal problem, be it in health, be it in education, be it in tech, be it in finance. I mean, really, the topic doesn't matter as long as you're solving something. And I think the financial return is a great motivator. So it's about balancing. And so the challenge is, how to get that balance right, and how to get access to investors that are like-minded and will understand what it is you're trying to manifest, to achieve, and then really putting their money where their mouth is.
Thanks. So Thomas, I'll ask you this question: do you think impact is a trade-off, or it's a balance, right? For profits, right? We're all, I think most of us here are for profits. So is it a trade-off at some point, or it's a balance that we keep on balancing, right? Throughout.
Very, very interesting question. So I guess at SEAF, how I guess we think about it is, and we come from the for-profit world, the management team comes from for-profit. So, and we were always taught to maximize returns as best we can. However, with some of the programs that have been implemented, it's a very costly. It can be very costly to implement, and if we're trying to track, say, employment and economic multipliers, and tracking gender outcomes, and seeing if our sector, if our investments align with the sectors that we're involved in, it becomes a bit more costly. So returns are going to be under a bit of pressure. So it is a balance. There are ways to make money, but it can be challenging at times.
So it's not a trade-off, or is it a trade-off?
It's a bit of a trade-off, yeah. Depending on how much, I guess, how deep you're going into impact, you are trading off a certain degree of returns for that impact, yes.
Rosina, if I ask you the same question, right? So in terms of, to you, what is impact? Yeah. And is it a trade-off?
I think there is a little bit of a trade-off, especially when you're a venture-backed startup. But like I am, I've raised funds and given away equity. But for me, it was more around solving for major problems, access to affordable healthcare in a market where 30% of the medicine is counterfeit. So when it comes to sort of investing in impact, to me, and being a founder, it means backing a business that improves lives at scale. And with our population that we have, you can do this at scale while making an impact, but also commercially delivering on real returns. And it is a bit about that balance of, commercial versus impact, versus not for profit. But I believe in a market like ours, where we are an emerging economy, going to be $1 trillion economy by 2023, you can do both. You can actually do both, create major impact in areas like health, education, food, AgriTech, and actually deliver back commercially to investors as well in the form of real returns.
And do you think you have a board, as you said, you have raised funds and everything? Do you get questioned for not generating impact versus do you get questions for not meeting the quarterly targets in terms of revenue and growth, right? Which one becomes the most critical question for you? Is it not meeting the impact targets or not meeting the revenue targets or the financial?
Well, we don't have any impact investors on our cap table, so you can guess what they're always asking about. And thankfully, touch all the wood around me, we have matched and met all of our targets. I mean, when you're venture backed, they are looking to invest a certain amount of money for you to grow. You burn that cash and for you to grow to a certain scale. But part of our pitch deck, the first couple of slides in my pitch deck is about the problems that we're solving for and the impact that we are making. But specifically about the board, it is about numbers. It is about, driving for growth and revenue, profitability, and all this kind of stuff. But I do believe that there are some impact investors out there that we've spoken to where that side of things has just not mattered at all. It is more on the social side, the more kind of what lives are you impacting? What is the scale, with 170 million population, so much of the population in the rural parts of Bangladesh that don't have access to basic things. There is that side of things too.
Right. So moving to you with the same question, right? What is impact for you within 10 Minute School? And for you, is it a trade-off or is it part of the game?
Thank you, Bhai. So I see impact as whenever you are trying to solve a problem in the basic human needs arena, for example, in the education, health, shelter, food, and security, all of these like very basic human needs. Whenever you're trying to solve a problem, of course, through a profitable business, and whatever solution you provide, it actually multiplies the effect or the how many people or beneficiaries you're reaching. That's definitely a impact investment. And regarding the trade-off question, I think whenever you're solving in these arenas of agriculture, food, education, health, impact actually sometimes helps you scale better, scale more sustainably when you balance it out properly. So for us, if we say particularly for the context of 10 Minute School, we reached a massive distribution because we focused on impact at the beginning. Of course, later on when we, that's a different story. Probably I shouldn't, build on it too much. But we started off let's say 60% impact focus, 40% profit focus, and then eventually as we became VC funded, we had to change the trajectory. I always believe maintaining this balance always helped us scale more than actually affect our top line.
So same question. Does your board question you about your impact?
Not really. As long as if it is like, for example, we have rather been asked this question that you have so many followers, you have so many, you know, impact stories, then why is the percentage of your paid users versus free users is so low, and why can't you convert it as much? So yeah, like Rosina was said, we don't have impact investors on board. The only thing that matters is if telling the impact story and creating impact actually scale our distribution.
So yeah, no, so Thomas, I'll come back to you. So I think so that's the story, right? I asked this question to them because that's I think the similar story across a lot of startups where now how do you get people to get motivated and interested to folk, because everyone has an impact story. I think that's very clear. But then do we need pressure from the top? Is the board responsible for holding us accountable in terms of creating impact? But then again, most of us have very typical VC funds who have invested in us. They're more on the dollar return versus getting the social return from things. So what's the best approach to go about it? Do we build a board very consciously to help us be more accountable?
You're talking about corporate boards in the investee company referring to.
Yeah.
Typically, how we'll structure things, our investors require us to meet certain impact metrics. In turn, as we're investing, we will require a certain degree of impact reporting that we need to verify. And that, provided they're accepting our funds, they will have to accept our terms of impact measurement as well, as we're investing. Sometimes they have to be adjusted. Sometimes they might be egregious in terms of targets. Sometimes they're easily met, but getting companies to actually focus on the impact targets can be a real challenge at times. So sometimes the reporting actually lags. Sometimes they don't do it. After a while, we have a situation where one of our companies is not doing so well financially, and they've kind of allowed the impact measurements to go by the wayside. So then the question becomes, well, are we more interested in getting our money back, LP money back, or are we more interested in the impact? And that is, the answer is both. But at the end of the day, LPs are going to remember that you lost the money on a certain investment. They're less likely to remember, even our impact, especially our impact investors, less likely to remember how many jobs were created or how much tax these companies are actually paying into the local governments.
Right. Marine, yeah, please.
Yeah, I would love to step in there. So interesting. So to your question, is it a trade-off? I don't think so. It's a choice. And when you listen to Rosina and Reit speaking, it is a choice that you make. And it's a choice to make your money work for good. And if your LPs don't get that, then it's a matter of educating your LPs and bring them along on the journey that this is important and they need to value this. And so maybe just to say at 2X Global, so what we do is, try to bring a gender lens into investing. I think we managed to raise a warehouse facility to get more female fund managers to a successful close on the African continent by educating the LPs we work with, by really taking them along in the impact journey. Because what we are doing is, it's a market building facility. There really is no money to be made. There's a pipeline to be built. It's a different narrative. I mean, it's not similar, probably, Rosina, right, to what it is you are doing. But we managed to raise a fund with only the return expectation being like 1%. I mean, because there was not a point. But it took a lot of conversation and it took a lot of convincing that there was a problem that needed to be solved, and women were underrepresented. And that is an unwise. It is a fault in our system and a blind spot that we collectively have that we need to address in order for our investments to land into the hands of women and have an equitable return, and a better return, I dare say. And then one more thing, and then I'll shut up, Fahad, and I'll give the mic back to you. I think there is a very important difference between maximizing and optimizing. And somehow for me, the maximizing feels like we really want to squeeze the last drop out of everything. That can we decide that's an old form of capitalism that no longer serves us? Can we look at optimizing? Because now you can talk about this balance. Thomas, I'm also, I'm trying to read your body language. I don't think you're very excited about this passionate speech, but I may be wrong. But so this is not ignorant. This is, we need to model something different. And I love the stories of the people that are really doing it on the ground. And I think if you're being squeezed for the last drop of financial return, there is a role to play, to stand up and to push back and to show the balance and the real change in people's lives. Impact sounds so empty, but it's really changing people's lives for the better. That's not empty.
Thank you, Marine, for that. Marine, I think I'll follow up on this. So one question I had, or more like a statement, it's like, as a founder, right? So if me, Rosina, Raid, and the other founders in the room, if we're, either we can start doing things on our own, right? So that's what we did at iFarmer. We had absolutely no clue about impact fund or anything, but as I said, from day one, we had an impact mandate. We had an impact team from day one generating. It's been 6 years of iFarmer, and I think for the past 6 years, every year we have published an impact report on what we do. Now, some people care, some doesn't, but I keep on publishing it every year, right? But how do we keep ourselves motivated? Either you get accountable from the top, from the board, or you have to self-motivate yourself. But what's the process? How do we do this, right? Not everyone comes from a development background or impact background that I came from. So how do founders make themselves, they understand that they're creating impact, but where do they start? What do they start with? First thing, how do you measure impact, and why do we measure impact, right? Because it does you have to invest in this. You can't just get things for free, because even if you have to do someone told me I have to do an RCT, right? A randomized control trial to generate rigorous data that we are generating impact. But then my question as well, an RCT takes a whole lot of resources to actually do this kind of studies. And I don't think I was motivated well enough. I couldn't see the carrot in front of me, like, why should I do this? So how do we motivate ourselves and build that impact story?
Yeah, well, let me give you an answer from where I come from, and so yes, I don't think anyone really gets motivated by measuring. I don't think that in itself is something. I think people get motivated by doing the right thing and making money while they do so. I think that in the end is the motivator. But then if we talk about measuring and how to do that without going into outrageous assessments and cost, therefore, I think that the way we do that at 2X is maybe a start when you are interested to surface the gender balance in your portfolio. And I think any investor any financial institution should be interested in this, because this is about the balance I spoke to earlier, but now the balance goes not between, so it's not a trade-off between impact and financial returns, it's now a balance between representation of men and women. And so what 2X has developed is a fairly simple set of criteria that you can apply at the fund level. As a GP, you can, for instance, move towards having at least 30% of women in senior leadership. You can look at it at the investment level, so your investment process and your portfolio, and you can use these 2X criteria. I'll put a link in the chat window in a bit. Sure. But to use it to screen at sourcing, due diligence, and then eventually at the portfolio management stage, and or you can, if you have access to technical assistance, provide tailored support to founders to help them improve gender smart practices. And when I say gender smart practices, it goes from recruiting the right people to progressing them, to paying them equitably, to ensuring that there is support for care issues, that there is clarity around what happens with gender-based violence issues. But to sum it up, I think measuring your gender lens doesn't have to be complicated. And for some it will be a motivator, for some it will not. Yeah. But is it healthy housekeeping to do this? Is it good for your bottom line? Yes, it is.
Rosina, have you approached impact funds, and what has the experience been?
I think we had approached one impact fund when we were quite small, and we didn't manage to get through to, it wasn't very fruitful. But I think that was just the criteria or the mandate. Bangladesh isn't on many mandates at the time when we started 5 years ago. So our experience of impact funds hasn't been great. So yeah, unfortunately, no. We've approached some, but it's not been successful.
And why, if I may ask, like, other than the Bangladesh context, are there any other thing that you want to share about? Like, what was the challenge that you faced?
I just think that we weren't at the right stage. We were just far too early. Perhaps now it would be something that would be worthwhile conversation with various impact funds, because we're 5 years on and we've scaled to almost 2 million customers. So we are making far more impact than when we started back in 2020.
So on that note, Thomas, if a company approaches SEEF, right, for funding, what is it that you look for? What is that impact? Like, when we pitch a VC, we talk about, hey, we have reached this amount of revenue, our month on month is 20% growth. We have blah, but when it comes to part of the pitch, what do you look for in terms of impact that makes it interesting for you?
Yeah, so I would say it would have to align with some of the sectors where we have a specialization in, such as agriculture, or healthcare, or financial inclusion, some of general and stuff. So it would have to sort of get through that, I guess, that part of the funnel. Then we look for, well, how can we help grow this company? How can we get involved, potentially through our seed business, where we're developing ecosystems in a country potentially that we've never been in before? How can we help them in terms of impact? What is the potential for impact with the organization? Are we qualified to help them? If they pass that test, we're doing a check, and as Maureen said, we do very much focus on gender lens. Well, and if I could just digress for a second, at our board level, at our portfolio manager level, at at people level as well as on the investment level. We do focus on it. It's a big focus for us, and we're very cognizant of it. And we go more than 30%. We try to do 50%. We try to do half as best we can. We try to. It is difficult because some markets don't have, women have not really participated in some markets, and it's very difficult to find young women to take on some of these projects. There's a lack of experience, but there's also a lack of experience with men too in some of the markets as well. So sometimes it's just a leap of faith. We have to move there. But yeah, so we're looking at various areas. Can we help? Is there a reconstruction that's going on? Such as we're focused a bit in Ukraine at the moment. Bangladesh is very interesting to us. There's a large number of people. There's a large population. There are many needs, both from a financial perspective and as well from an impact perspective, from climate and wetlands, et cetera. So there various markets where we feel we have an expertise and we could add value, both from an ecosystem development perspective as well as from a financial perspective.
Yeah, so it seems like I'll pick on the whole gender lens thing, right? So, at 10-minute school, do you have a gender lens to look at your number of users, male versus female, or actively promoting to attract more female users to come into the platform? Is that something that you actively look at or try to, create interventions to have more female users of your platform?
So when we, identified the problems that we really want to solve at 10-minute school, we identified the three, the iron triangle of education, right? So affordability, quality, and accessibility. If we focus on the accessibility bit, schools or the formal education system is usually not enough. So students in Bangladesh from grade 6 to 12, 1 to 12, you would say, actually go for after-school tutoring. So our online-based programs are actually designed to make sure that you can study at home while having the similar, albeit not really the offline experience, but almost similar experience, learning outcome, and everything. As you probably know, in Bangladesh, it's after school means after evening, and sometimes it's in the night hours. So naturally, the females actually prefer this online way of learning because it's safer. It's home. They don't have to take their parents out with them or some guardian, and even the parents prefer this. So it is definitely something we pitch during our say during our pitch to our potential customers, who are basically the parents, right? Who are actually those who that buy versus those who that use are different. So
right.
both of them, when it comes to females, actually approve of this, and of course one other thing is how you can actually create the environment so that the females are getting an environment of less or no harassment and all of those, a very gender equal place. So that is also important, what we have to mention. And as of now, I think even going that way, even after having this advantage, the percentage of females is not like you would expect that 55% females and 45% male, but that's not true. It's exactly the opposite. So 55% are males right now on our platform, and 45% is female. But yeah, in general, what you have received.
But this 45% female, did it come organically, like this number, or you had some interventions to bring more female into the platform?
We didn't have active interventions that actually allowed them. It's completely organic. Yeah.
All right, great. So just moving on to the overall Bangladesh context. So, Bangladesh had I think it has a very good history in terms of attracting a lot of development fund, right? Be it the NGOs and the global NGOs, the local NGOs, have been attracting funding for decades. I think since independence, we have had some great stories in terms of how development fund helped change things in the country. But that development fund comes mostly as a grant, right? It has come more as a grant. Now, I feel like there's a shift happening within the broader development sector in the country. There's more, development organization focusing on impact funding, right? There's the embassies are taking different programs in terms of, focusing on impact-based companies to help them generate more impact instead of just going the nonprofit route. So I think this model has come from private sector development, market-based development, whatever we call this in different names. But the whole idea that helping private sector to do more, take more risks in terms of creating impact and covering that risk, right? So Thomas, I'd go back to you that what you've been investing in a few countries, emerging economies. So what are the key structure and policies, right? In terms of these markets that you operate in that makes it easier to deploy funds into these, economies or into these markets? And what is it that Bangladesh can do more to attract impact funds into the country?
Sure. I guess our biggest issue, Bangladesh, it's a phenomenal opportunity. And it's been a phenomenal opportunity for a long period of time. Obviously, there's political issues that have to be dealt with. I think we're waiting on, I guess, the election coming up. But one of our biggest problems has been getting money returned to us, dollar return. That's a challenge, a real challenge. And we've been, but that being said, we are big believers in impact and how we can help you. But what we look for is like agriculture and food systems. I would talk about, and they have this, particularly in Bangladesh, a significant potential for productivity and value chain improvements. And we look at affordable health care and diagnostics, and we have a fund that we are launching, an assistive technology fund, and I think that will be well suited for Bangladesh and the SME environment there. Again, women economic participation is not to beat the same drum, but this is a key. Bangladesh has that. Bangladesh is trying to improve that, and then the big one is a high exposure to climate risk, another area that we focus on. So those are some of the factors where we think that there's strong impact potential for participation and adaptation and resilience focused projects. So to us, Bangladesh is a very interesting market. It's a very key market. But we have to, the improvement, we need to see a little bit more political stability, and we need to be able to, at times, get our money out so we can reinvest it.
Right. So I think in terms of that is a very, that's something that I think impacts across the board in terms of, getting an exit, taking your money back so that you can invest, into other places as well. So that's one. Yeah.
Reflow it back in. So we have to bring it out and then reflow it. And that's a challenge for us.
Yeah, that is a challenge. I'm sure the Startup Bangladesh team is taking note on this because this has been a challenge in the market for some time, be it impact fund, be it VC fund, that has been an underlying challenge for all of us. But also I think, Thomas, please.
Where it's different. So Bangladesh the economy it's just an enormous economy. It's an underserved economy. It has one of the largest populations in the world, and this is a major advantage of Bangladesh. There are other countries, Africa, South America, that have similar problems with dollar issues, but we can resolve this. This would be something where I think there would be a significant amount of investment if the dollar issue can be resolved.
Right. Nurul Bhai, I think you have taken this as a note. So I'll also try to very quickly share something, because I think at iFarmer we have seen sort of both sides, right? So one is like one story where, so similar to 10-minute school, or as Raid said, we also have about 45% of our farmer base are women, right? We're talking to an impact fund for funding. One of the thing that they ask for is you need to show these women participating in the market, right? And we're like, okay, we have 45% farmers as women. Now what we have to do is show that they are participating in the market, which means they're going to the retail shops to buy agriculture inputs, or they're going to the market to sell their produce. And we thought, okay, we'll do it. But then we figured out that that is a very difficult thing to do, because whether it's norms, talk about the societal norms and everything, women are not participating in the market, right? But we could not unlock, we would not unlock the fund unless we show evidence that our women farmers are participating in the market. So we thought, okay, we need to design some interventions around this. So we actually created like a collection point where female farmers can go and sell their produce. We did some miking in the rural villages, that we have created a separate center where women can come and sell their products. It's run by women. We have designed it as such and everything, right? But then no one came. And at that point, it felt like that just to show impact, are we doing things which is probably not, it's probably not our task to do this. We can only show this and, get a tick box, or we can run, more long-term interventions and gradually change things. So sometimes it also feels like that the impact funds comes with a tick box that, well, tick, gender lens, what's the percentage of, women board members do you have? That's a very common question we get whenever we're, applying for these kind of funds or talking to these funds. But then, do I now, put in a woman member in the board just because I need to attract those funds? Or is sometimes it also works as a trigger, because something needs to change, right? And you need to trigger things. So how do you look at it, Maureen, like in terms of the intention, right, of using a gender lens? Making sure that it is part of the business, it becomes part of the business over time, and not just a tick box to attract funding.
Yeah, so there's, I think, two ways to look at this, Fahad. I don't even care if it started as a tick box, because to tick that box, you have to measure, you have to understand where the women are. Do you have them in your board? Are they represented at leadership level? Are you looking at employment conditions for women? Are your products and services women friendly? Is your supply chain gender balanced? And so those are the questions you would need to think through. That's data you need to collect to even be able to tick that first box. If you're wise as an entrepreneur, and I think entrepreneurs are people that really seek the opportunities, through asking yourself these questions and collecting the data, getting the answers, you'll see what potential you're missing out on. Because, if you make use of the entire potential pool of employees, of customers, and then I think you can enrich your business. Maybe there's another thing I would like to add, and then I would love to hear Rosina also, because I saw her, nodding her head on this question. But back to something that Thomas said about Bangladesh, and that really resonated. It is and climate and gender that are the two things I think that there's. huge need and also therefore huge potential. Maybe important to understand that climate and gender are very related also. Women are disproportionately affected by the climate crisis, and there is a gazillion data points around that. Women drown more, they don't learn to swim. I mean, it's just the dresses in the rural setting, you know, that inhibits you. You're too heavy with all this cloth around you as there are floods, etc. But women are also a disproportionate part of the solution. So having them be part of the decision-making tables whereby we look at what is needed to solve for these problems. They'll come up with the long-term solutions. They will come up with the sense of what is needed for the community, and will keep the others in the room honest on what really needs to happen. So there's a very clear linkage there also, but yeah. Just
Rosina, do you want to, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree totally with the whole tick box thing. Sometimes it can feel like a bit of a belt and braces approach where you've just like forcefully like hiring women or forcefully promoting women. But I think sometimes that needs to happen because they're clearly, the conversation has started because there is an underrepresentation. And I know that we're talking about like emerging economies, but even when I worked in investment banking many years ago, I literally was one of 2 women on a floor of 60 men. So again, there was, you know, belt and braces processes put within the bank to forcefully, you know, promote women or attract more women. And, you know, some people felt like, oh, they don't have the right skill set, but it has to start somewhere. And that approach, and it's totally changed. And, you know, investment banking is not like what it used to be 15 years ago. But I do agree, you just need to start having those tick boxes. You need to start having, I mean, it's well researched that having a mix of genders at the C-suite level, even at the lead level, brings a different combination of empathy, commercial nouns, just different skill sets that actually make for better decisions as a whole for the company. So I think those belt and braces approaches and having those tick boxes for these underrepresented kind of, you know, communities of people, whether it be gender or ethnic minority and all these kind of things, it's necessary to start the conversation, to start the changes, and that hopefully will flow through to something a bit more sustainable.
Rosina, do you measure your impact at Aramco?
I think it's an interesting question to actually kind of define it like that, because absolutely everything you, me, and Rai do is impactful.
Right.
Giving the gift of education to someone in a rural village, whether they've paid for it or not, if it's a free module, that is already creating impact. For me, delivering like a very cheap medicine to somebody is impacting their health, how long they're going to live. For you, again, on the agricultural side, through any transaction that you're doing, there's impact. So I don't think I really need to measure it because I know everything that I do, even people who turn up at my offices to work, are creating that impact. So yeah, you want to call it for the number of people I employ to create this impact, the number of orders that go out the door every day, impact. And I think that's the same for all 3 of us founders, that I don't think there is just a metric that's...
Yeah, so I'll push you on this a bit, right? So because you said, yes, everything we do creates an impact, but then why wouldn't we measure it? Or what would motivate us to measure it and share it?
I mean, you can have various KPIs around it, but I think because of the market that we're in, the problems that we're solving for, the fact that, you know, we are an emerging economy, we don't have basic things like Raid was saying, like basic things to food, shelter, health. Those are basic needs that people in the West don't even think about. Developed nations don't even think about. Half of the population in Bangladesh don't have access to affordable healthcare. That's a horrible stat to hear. And people in a cushy, you know, developed nation probably don't even think that that's possible. Like, it's weird to hear that. Whenever we're pitching to investors and we show them a typical photo of a pharmacy, they don't get it until they've seen the photo of how bad it actually is, because they're used to these bright light pharmacies with all these, you know, things. So I think, you know, it's all part of like almost a bit of an education as to where are we as a market? Where are we as a nation? What we are solving for really basic problems, not sexy SaaS-based things, which we can do also, but what we're solving for are like really basic human needs. So I think it's because it's basic human need, impact just is all over it.
But could impact, and this is also to Raid as well, if you want to respond to this, that because there are impact funds available to deploy funds, where one of the criteria is that you have to demonstrate your impact, which means again goes back to be able to measuring your impact, showing evidence of your impact. I mean, it is what it is, right? You have to show your evidence. So yeah, like for iFarmer, as I said at the beginning, that I have been this balance between my team and where I come from, and why do we need to focus on impact? Why do every year for the last 6 years I've been generating an impact report? And there are certain things that has, I think, helped us in a way. So for example, we are getting debt from impact funds at a lower than market rate, because the impact that we're able to demonstrate is what covers the delta between the market rate and the rate that we're getting from the impact funds. Now, to both Raid and Rosina, will that act as a motivator for you to start calculating your impact and demonstrating this to investors and whoever you're talking to for raising funds? Because VC fund is one thing, and we all know how difficult it has been for all of us. But at the same time, we're saying Bangladesh is a country where the upside in terms, any sector you pick, right? And the sectors that we're in, there is so much upside in terms of generating and showing impact. And if we can measure this, if we can show, evidence that we are actually, it's not just what we say in our pitch deck or in sessions like this, but we also have evidence that we are creating an impact in the life of a female student or a patient or a farmer, and there's someone who's willing to pay for it, right? Will that motivate you to start measuring your impact by number, just the way we do the other metrics?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe I didn't explain clear enough in your previous question. I feel like, yeah, I can show you a heat map of how when we first started, all of our orders were in Dhaka city only because it was too difficult to solve for outside of Dhaka city. But now our heat map, the whole of Bangladesh is green. You can see spots everywhere, and even in the most remotest of areas. So have I created impact? Absolutely. Almost 60% is now Dhaka city and 45%. Well, that maths was wrong. 55% is Dhaka city, and then the rest is outside of Dhaka city. Why? Because we've worked with 3PLs to make payments really easy. So again, that reach to all those rural areas, that is an impact metric right there. And if those KPIs that impact funds are looking for are easily measured by data, that is another key thing as well, because an impact fund could say, you need to show me A, B, C, D, 1, 2, and 3. And as a startup founder, if I'm able to have the data to demonstrate, then of course I would apply, of course.
Right, same question to you, right?
I think another lens of looking at it as we are both, all of us are VC funded founders, right? So historically, 10 Minutes School actually looked at these numbers, like nowadays we call them vanity metrics, like views on a video and then how many likes, shares were there, because we started off with free videos, reaching millions of people on Facebook, YouTube, and social media. That's how we built our distribution engine at first, and afterwards we kind of monetized at the B2C level. But what happened when we actually got VC funded was we had to focus on metrics that actually mattered. These views, these shares, likes, all of these actually meant impact, but those are all input metrics. You don't know if the student or that learner was actually, did they learn something from that video? And when you optimize for views and all of those things, you could like dance on the video and get, lots of views. And that's why we definitely measure, but we don't talk as much about it, because this kind of shifts the founder's focus. We feel good about a view, a million view video. We feel good about like lots of shares, but when we actually see what the business metric is, like conversions, paid, how many users did we get then to get to pay from that video? That's really low. So we kind of had to shift our mindset from, as we shifted our general schools business from, more, as I said, it was more free videos at first. Then actually after COVID, we kind of monetized more. And in the earlier days, of course, we kind of we were looking for impact funds. But you also mentioned, right, that there are two types of impact funds. One is the grant based or donation kind of, and the other is actually equity investment in the form of impact investment in the form of equity investment.
Also, I think impact investment is now also is looking into debt financing as well, which I have discovered very recently, and it seems like most impact funds are also now offering low cost working capital for companies who can demonstrate their impact.
I would say
I think it's
Sorry, Thomas, I saw you
ahead.
nodding on this. I'll get back to you. What do you think about this? That there is, because Bangladesh as a country, we have had our struggles in terms of attracting pure VC funds, right? And this is not a market where your valuation grows in every 6 months, right? It is what it is, right? You just can't increase your value and raise funds in every 6 months, right? That's not how things operate here, for whatever reasons. But at the same time, there are lots of impact funds globally available, whether they're deploying funds here. Some of them have been operating in Bangladesh. But yeah, as startups, should we actively search for these funds? How do we pitch to these funds? How do we convince them to invest in our companies? Because as Rosina said, everything we're doing there is impact. Now, why and what can we, like, how can we actually bring these funds into Bangladesh?
Who's that for, that question?
Sorry, Thomas, that was your, Marin. You can go ahead with this one as well. Yeah.
So maybe a brief one before I pass it over to you, Thomas. So it is about, so your point, Rosina, we're making impact, therefore we don't have to measure. If you want to attract international finance, you will have to measure and demonstrate. So even if all of it is impact, you will still need to find a language and a shorthand to quantify that and demonstrate. And again, the 2X criteria to quantify the gender lens is a fairly elegant, and in your case and both your cases, I think all three of your cases are very easy shorthand to demonstrate what you're doing there that will speak to international investors. But to make it intentional and to bring it out, I think is important. Thomas.
Thank you. So I just wanted to go back to the how you were measuring impact just quickly. Yes, everybody does the KPIs and there's measurements and KPIs, and we have to communicate it. But we also measure it in terms of our additionality. How much additionality, and what I mean by that is just by way of examples, may not be a great example, but if we invest, say, $10 million in something, is there other funding coming along with us? Similarly, if we look at a company, we invest in a company and they have created a successful business, are there cottage industries around that have been developed? So we'll look at the additionality of our investments as well. That's another way we measure our impact. But I guess going back to your question on how Bangladesh can be an attractive destination, I would just present the strong macro impact narrative that global investors are looking for. It's here. And I would say building those impact companies, demonstrate a big one is governance and compliance and things of that nature, and just have a good story to tell. Build visibility through good storytelling and leverage Bangladesh and the diaspora to produce, I would say, to provide that credibility and the access. And I think those are some of the things that Bangladesh companies would need to do. It's all going to be on an individual basis for the part, but if Bangladesh as a whole could do that, I think it would attract a significant amount more capital.
Yeah, so I think as I said, there is this opportunity that there are impact funds who are investing in Bangladesh. I think one of the biggest stories of impact investment in Bangladesh probably is Gates Foundation investing in Bcash in its early days. Not just Gates Foundation, if I'm not wrong, Leapfrog, another large impact fund, has also invested in this country. But this has not happened more frequently, even though, so there is a gap, right? On one side, we are saying, the founders, we are saying we are generating impact, right? On the other end, there are impact funds who are supposed to come and help us scale up our impact, right? These stories that we have. Now, there must be a gap in between that there are not many impact funds coming into the country and investing. Either we are not able to tell our story, as Thomas said, at a macro level, as well as at the micro level, the company level. Maybe we have a very top line picture of our impact, but maybe they want more details. And then the question comes, well, how much do we invest as a company to be able to measure, look deeper into these data, and show impact? And for what, right? What is on the table for us to continuously focus on impact actively? As you said, sometimes ticking the box is also important because not everyone is starting from the same. It's not a level playing field, right? So someone's way below, and we have to pull them up. But as businesses to continue to do this, we definitely also need incentive, right? And that's where I think the impact funds, as I shared the iFarmer story, where we're getting working capital at lower than market rate because we are able to demonstrate the impact to these funds. So that again incentivizes us to continue to work on this, to get better at measurement, to get better at demonstrating our evidence. So at this point, we're mindful of our time, so I think we're almost there at the time. And so Nurul Bhai, do you want to chip in into this thing, how Startup Bangladesh? Because when we talk about funding for startups, we only think about VC funds. And as we have seen, VC funds, they're all in our boards. We're not getting questioned for the impact that we're generating, but then there are funds available in the market. We have a great impact story. Now, how can we connect this? And where can Startup Bangladesh come in and help us connect these dots?
Thanks, Fahad Bhai, and thanks to all the panelists for wonderful discussion. I was a very active listener throughout the session, and my comment is, see Bangladesh. You will see Bangladesh as a great impact destination going forward, because here we see the largest NGOs in the world is here in Bangladesh. They have created a lot of impact, but the difference is that sort of a story is coming out. That sort of stories are heard by the other investors or other markets. But as you and other impact organizations or startups are saying about your stories or numbers, on point from Marin, that should be measured very well. That should be measured very categorically, and it should be served to the international investors for their knowledge, for their decision making. And as Tom was also saying, from the macro point of view, this is highly important for us to establish that this country is on a political stability track, and growth is very good going forward. Repatriation and exit is easier compared to earlier period. So on which we are actively working with BIDA and Bangladesh Bank. These good developments are happening very soon. So, but we should not tell what will happen. We have to do this, and we need to deliver the results, because international impact investors have waited for a long time, not 2 or 3 years, maybe a decade or more. So this time is for us to deliver. Otherwise, I see they will lose interest. Our credibility will degrade, and we need very serious action from our side. So I'm mindful of what sort of activities are run by BIDA, Bangladesh Bank, BECC, and other regulatory and quasi-regulatory bodies. And I'm sure some of the good news we can share with Tom and Marine very soon regarding some of the policy level and regulatory developments. But yes, that is not enough. Our impact stories should be measured, should be shared, like what sort of developments done by the NGOs like BRAC and Grameen and other big giants in Bangladesh. And wherever we are seeing any sort of startups like in the education, healthcare, digital divide, or anywhere in Bangladesh, you will see great impact stories. So looking at, I'm sure Fahad Bhai, you'll see a lot of impact investors will come in Bangladesh. And from Startup Bangladesh, we are not focusing on startups only. We are also here to talk to the international investors, also support them, and be the point of contact for any sort of development, any sort of support we can provide them. Thank you.
Thank you, Nurbhai. So we are at the end of this. Okay, so I think we're done with the questions. So thank you, everyone. I think just to sum it up, I'd say I think Nurbhai sort of summed it up very nicely, but just from a founder's perspective and what I have seen is there are impact funds available in different forms, whether it's a grant, whether it's revenue backed, whether it's impact focused, whether it comes with a specific target, right? That will give you X amount of money if you can demonstrate this amount of farmers, women farmers participating in the market, right? So it comes in various forms, but the money is out there. I'd say we have a great story because of the context from where we are starting all of our businesses, that there is a few million people in any sector that we look into who we can uplift with the technology, with the service that we're providing. Now, are we able to measure how much are we uplifting these people, how much we're changing their life, what impact are we creating in their lives? Are we able to measure it and able to demonstrate it so that we can attract this capital that is out there and not just run after VC fund and the regular stuff that we usually run after? This is I think another option that we can look into. And yeah, that would be my take on this. So thank you, everyone, for joining. Marine, Thomas, Thomas was really late for you, so thank you for joining. Rosina and Raid, thank you so much. Thank you, Nurbhai, for giving us this opportunity, and Startup Bangladesh for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you, Nur.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
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 Bye.